Hi, everybody. My name's Keith Taylor. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy in this crazy time that we're having. And with so much going on around us due to the effects of COVID-19, one area where I'm getting a lot of questions is from small business owners. They're concerned what to do next, will their business survive, and just trying to figure everything out. Really, as legislation is still being worked on today. Today is Friday, March 27th, and hopefully we have some more knowledge by this afternoon and tonight of what's actually going to get passed. And we're still waiting to see. But today, I'm starting my video interview series with a business attorney and a good friend of mine, Robert Lack. How are you doing today, Robert?
Good, Keith. How are you?
Things are going well, thanks. Before we get started, briefly give everyone a little bit of background about yourself and what you do.
Yes, so I've been practicing law for almost 12 years, predominantly in general corporate and tax field. So help small business owners from starting businesses, exiting businesses, and trying to operate businesses and everything in between.
Understood, got
So
it.
we really sort of have to roll with the punches as they come.
That is for sure. We're all still playing this by ear as it happens and unfolds.
Yep.
So this week I've been talking to a number of small business owners, and yesterday I just decided I was going to email a number of them, over 15 or 20 of them, and I just wanted to ask them what was on their mind. And I told them I was going to be talking to an attorney and asking them questions. So today the questions I'm going to ask you are going to be directly from my clients. So they may be a little bit all over the place, but they're coming directly from the emails that I received and the concerns they're having as of today.
Okay.
So to begin, I think there's a couple of items, if you can maybe help explain what some of these terms are before we get into the actual questions. So
Sure.
some of these business owners know this and some people may not. So what does it mean by when people are talking about getting furloughed? Can you just help explain that?
Yeah, so furlough is where you basically don't have an employee show up to work, either don't pay them or have a drastic reduction in their actual salary or earnings, but you keep them on the payroll so they can continue potentially to get health benefits. They continue to be eligible for the 401k plan or any type of other benefit that might be provided. The idea is it's temporary in nature. It's someone you're going to bring back. When you bring them back, you don't want them to have to requalify for a lot of new benefits. So it's a temporary reduction in hours and or salary, but they're still, an employee. Whereas if you terminate them, the employment relationship's done, and then when you bring them back on, you may have to go through that whole process again.
Okay, that makes sense. And what can you tell me about the Families First Act?
So that was the first statute that Congress passed probably about a week ago now, maybe a little bit more. The main thing that it appeared to deal with was expanding Family Medical Leave Act. So if an employee had to take time off because they had symptoms from the coronavirus, COVID-19, or if they had family members who were having symptoms and they had to take care or they had to quarantine to protect other people, it was expanding some of the rules around the Family Medical Leave Act, making it, available for up to 2 weeks of pay, making it available at 100% for up to 2 weeks of pay, I think, 80% if you were taking care of someone else. And then there were some carve-outs for some smaller businesses, but that's one of the main things that it did for employees was sick leave.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. Well, let's get into these questions. So the first is, and if I look away, it's because I'm looking at the notes to make sure that I get the questions right from the clients.
Yep.
How should a business look at obtaining a line of credit versus using an SBA loan to cover expenses?
So, predominantly, if a business right now, like with what we're going through, has the cash and the earnings and the performance to justify a third party loan, then it's really just an economic decision, right? So you would just go through the numbers, go through the terms of the loan, payment schedules, interest rates, and make whatever decision you can. If you're not going to be able to qualify for that third party loan, then the SBA, both with the Families First Act and then what looks like may pass or just pass the House and might be signed by the president in just a few moments, the CARE Act, each of those have SBA loan programs that business owners will have to sort of look at, take into account, and see which one is best for them.
Okay. Got it. And what would, so the question came about what is the effect of the new Senate bill on the employer? But when this client asked about the Senate bill, is that one of the acts you've already mentioned, or is that what's still being passed?
That's probably the First Families Act. The way that I would sort of break it down right now, and this might be a good point to sort of take into account some terms. There's a couple of different types of benefits that are out there and a couple of different types of loan programs. If we start with just the loan programs, the two that you're seeing mostly are emergency disaster loan program. You know, last week, North Carolina was designated an emergency disaster zone. You
Okay.
can you'll see the acronym for this is EIDL. So if you Google EIDL SBA loan, that's talking about an emergency disaster loan. The one that's also coming out, which is part of the CARE Act that looks like it's just been signed or will be signed, is what's called the Paycheck Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, right? They're both SBA programs. The difference, one of the differences is with the EIDL, you apply with that directly with the SBA. You don't have to go through a bank. The SBA website is set up. You basically just go to disaster loan program. They tell you exactly what to submit. It's all information that's based off of 2018 and 2019 earnings and cash flow and things of that nature. So the idea is to really get a streamlined loan process. I think they increased the amounts that you're available for that. The historical rule was $350,000. They increased that to $1 million.
Okay.
But it's just a straight up loan with the SBA. The
Makes
PPP,
sense. So,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, in one of the things you just mentioned, I lost my train of thought, but I think it was they are given extensions. Oh, I know what it was, the tax return. So if you haven't filed your 2019 tax return, I think they said they can use your 2018. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but what they're talking about there, I think, they will want, you know, a set of 2019 books for that program.
Got it.
What they've also referred to about whether or not you filed 2018 or 2019 are those $1,200 checks or $500 checks that are going out to everybody. That's where they've said, you know, based on your AGI, your adjusted gross income, there's a different benefit available. And
Right.
what they're saying there is that if you haven't filed 2019, they'll look back at 2018 to get an estimate of your AGI and then cut you a check right now based on that. But real quick, I just read this earlier today. I didn't know this. With those checks that they're sending out, it's actually just an advance credit. So in 2021, when we back and file our 2020 taxes in 2021, they're actually going to look at what your income was for this year in determining the credit phase out. And so if you get a check right now for $2,400, but you end up making less this year than you made in 2018 or 19, you actually might get an additional tax credit when you file in 2021.
Interesting. So it really depends on what your income is, not only last year to determine if you get any money, but then also next year to determine how it's on your returns.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
And I think there's a situation like, let's say last year you don't get any money because you made too much, but this year your income goes way down, then you might actually get that money, but it'll just be as a tax credit when you file because you ultimately would have been eligible. They're just using 2018 and 19 as an estimate for what you're going to be this year.
Got it. That's interesting. I didn't read the details of that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So here's another one. So apparently the Family First Act. So this is a specific question from a client. The Family First Act goes into effect, I think, April 1st. And any employee still employed after April 1st is eligible for various paid leave from the employer. So this business owner was leaning towards furloughing all the employees by March 31st and then getting an SBA loan as soon as it comes available. So questions around that, there's a number of them. Does paid leave come back into play if they get sick or if they need to care for their kids not in school? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the ways that these things are interacting with each other is probably those things that are kind of the most up in the air right now.
Okay.
From my understanding, based on what I've read, if you furlough employees and bring them back and you use SBA funds to actually make payroll, make rental payments and certain utilities, these are all called covered expenses, then you're basically complying with the intent of the program. As long as someone is an employee, they're entitled generally to sort of all of those rules, or all the laws surrounding employee benefits, including the sick leave. I don't know, when we talk a little bit about the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program,
right?
that's the one where there's some options or some possibilities to have the loan that you receive forgiven on a tax-free basis. And I'm not 100% confident if any salaries you pay to the sick employees who are taking that leave, if that's something that would be calculated in that or not. Again, I haven't been able to get that much into the details on those things.
Okay, makes sense. As a follow-up to that, if they furlough and then bring them back once they secure an SBA loan, would they need to be put through a new onboarding process? So a new offer letter, employment contract?
Yeah, not if they're furloughed. That's the benefit of being furloughed, is all of those same employment terms continue forward. It's just a matter that there's a temporary halt in work and salaries. So, I mean, if you think that this is going to be something short-term in nature and you're going to bring back the same team, or you just need to drastically reduce what that team is doing now, administratively and legally, it might be a better option to furlough rather than to terminate.
Okay, very helpful. So if the government deems a company a non-essential business and it makes them close the doors, would they still be able to keep paying their employees using that SBA loan, even if they would be more limited on a work they could do at home or something?
Yeah, I mean, if you qualify for the loan and you receive it, I mean, the intent of the program is to provide, 8 weeks or so of payments to employees to try to help businesses weather this storm. So yeah, I mean, even if you have to shut the doors, if you're paying people, then you're complying with the intent of the program, and depending on the program, you still would be eligible for a tax-free loan forgiveness.
Okay. And I think this next question you might have already answered, but under what circumstance would it be better for an employee to file for unemployment instead of the owner getting an SBA loan to keep paying them? And it may go back to your question on their economic situation, their cash reserves, things of that nature.
Yeah, it definitely would. And it might be a situation. I mean, remember, historically, you generally get unemployment when there's been an actual termination of employment. A lot of those rules are all state by state.
Okay.
But one of the things that the Families First Act did was the federal government strongly encouraged state governments to ease some of those rules and to allow furloughed employees to capture unemployment benefits. And not only that, historically, you've had to wait about a week or so before you can actually start collecting. And the federal government stepped in and said, well, if you let these people start collecting immediately, then we'll foot the entire bill for that first week. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of people getting on unemployment right now, because it's immediate. You don't have to wait the 7 days. A lot of states, and I think North Carolina is included in this, are treating furloughed employees and giving them some of the benefits of that as well, where historically they may not have. But ultimately, if you're a small business owner and you're planning on keeping these employees around, you just have to weather the storm. You ultimately might be get into one of these loan programs and bring them back and not have them be on.
Got it. And last question from this person. The SBA loan, is it understood that it's going to be 0% interest and 0% fees? Are you familiar with that?
So it is not 0% interest. My understanding is for the EIDL loan, the one that you take directly through the SBA,
Right.
my understanding is there's no loan costs associated with that. So you're not paying any origination or anything like that, but they are going to charge you interest. And I think the rate varies, but everything I've seen is usually like around 3.75 to 4%.
Okay.
Um, with the PPP program, and again, this is one that, it's just now in the statute. This one probably isn't going to have any too much guidance around it for another week or so. But my understanding is that that program is not being administered directly through the SBA. You have to go through the more traditional SBA loan requirements of going through a bank, right? And they're going to write you a loan that qualifies for the PPP. And so in that situation, you're still going to get, nice rates, longer terms, but the real benefit of that PPP program when it comes out is if you use those expenses for the things that are covered under the statute, again, potential tax-free loan forgiveness.
Okay.
And the EIDL is not going to offer that. That's my understanding.
Okay. Yeah. And again, it's what we know today, or at least the way we understand it. And it's still in a flow. We're still trying to figure it out. What about rent, right? Like these people have offices, and do they continue to pay rent? And what if they can't, and will it be forgiven?
So there's sort of two questions there. One, if you get a loan or loan proceeds, rent is an item that's allowed to be used under these loan programs without sort of violating the intent of the loan. So that is an available use of those funds. Now, let's not tie it to the SBA program and just say, cash is low, you decide what you have to pay. That's really where it comes down to sort of your relationship with your landlord. If you have a great landlord, long relationship, everyone's going to work together. Maybe, they agree to forbear payments for a period of time. Maybe you get put on, pay 1/3 for a period of time. You'll catch up when things get back. That's just all about, the deal that you can negotiate and, the way that people are going to work together. If you have a landlord where you don't necessarily get along and everyone wants to fight as much as possible, then it could be a situation where you don't pay, they try to evict, you argue force majeure or something else that relieves performance, and then there will probably be some interesting cases that come down about this in a couple years. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about what if you're the person that owns the building? What if you own a number of properties and now all your tenants can't pay? And if they can't pay, you're a business owner in a different sense of the word, that you own the properties that everybody rents, right? So it's just the same thing, or is there anything different?
No, it's the same thing. You look at what the program is that you can apply for. If you're a landlord and you have employees that you work with to help maintain those properties and deal with the tenants, then that's just going to be the same as any other business. Again, it's not limited. None of these programs are limited to the type of business that you are.
Okay. And what do we know about what's under some of the things being worked out for independent contractors?
Let me bring up one thing real quick.
Yeah.
Let me bring up one thing real quick.
Okay.
The one rule that's sort of out there that some people, it's very common for business owners to have owner-occupied property, right? So they own the property maybe through a separate entity that's being financed. The one thing that, the way I read the rules, that's a little bit limiting is when it comes to the tax-free forgiveness, any payments that you make on that owner-occupied property that are related to interest are available for tax-free forgiveness, but the principal amount is not going to be available for loan forgiveness.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
But again, it's only for the loan forgiveness. It's not for purposes of calculating, good use of the funds. It's all about the forgiveness on the back end.
Okay. And how does this relate to independent contractors and 1099 workers?
So that's one of the things that's pretty interesting in Family First. It appears that for unemployment insurance, they have really expanded the scope of how you qualify, who qualifies. It appears that anyone that's an independent contractor, if basically your income source goes away, going to be some way that they calculate what unemployment your benefit you're entitled to based off of prior earnings. And then this is the one thing that was interesting: the $600 enhancement to employee benefit to employment insurance, that will apply for independent contractors as well. And I think that goes through the end of June or maybe the end of July this year. It goes for like about 10 or 12 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I think they might have just extended it too. Okay, this is great information. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a part two. I think we'll go ahead and wrap up right here, and then we'll get some time to go over the rest of the questions. So, Robert, I appreciate your time today, and we'll definitely be talking soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.